Hello and welcome, and you've reached part 17 of 66 books, a series of 66 short overviews of the 66 books of our Bible, and we've reached the book of Nehemiah, the book of the continual restoration. Ezra and Nehemiah were originally one single book. Some say they were possibly even joined to 1 and 2 Chronicles to form one enormous narrative. Like Ezra before it, it is a book about return, rebuilding and restoration. But the rebuilding this time is of the wall, not the temple, and it also about the reforms that are seen to take place. Reforms that in fact need to take place more than once in this book. Thinking about the author, the very first verse of Nehemiah says these are the words of Nehemiah. So not surprisingly, it's usually said that this book comes from Nehemiah's personal memoirs. Most agree that these books contain the words of Nehemiah, but beyond that there are several theories. Some think Nehemiah composed and scribed some parts, but others were compiled by others. Some others think that Ezra wrote Nehemiah alongside Nehemiah himself, and he also compiled some of it, or that he wrote it entirely and compiled some of it using Nehemiah's diaries. A third view is that neither wrote it, but it was drawn together by several different people using different sources, including mainly previous work by Ezra and Nehemiah. The beginning of chapter 2 indicates that Nehemiah served under Artaxerxes. Artaxerxes the first of Persia reigned from 464 to 423 BC. Nehemiah chapter 2 verse 1 also says that Nehemiah left Persia in the 20th year of Artaxerxes, so we're sitting now around 445 BC. Nehemiah informs the reader that he had returned to Persia in the 32nd year of Artaxerxes, and that would be 432 BC. Thus, Nehemiah is seen to be in Jerusalem for around about 12 years, and Nehemiah 13 verse 6 also confirms this for us. After some time, he left Persia and returned to Jerusalem, so he was probably there around 425 BC. The book could not have been completed until after his second visit to Jerusalem because of what is described in it. Thus Nehemiah wrote the book probably around 425 BC. The recipients of the book were the remnant in Jerusalem after the captivity. Nehemiah was not writing this to correct some need in those people, but simply to remind them and subsequent generations of what God had done amongst them. Nehemiah himself in the book is seen to restore, then leave, then return and restore the people again. So therefore the subject is continual restoration. Zerubbabel came and restored, Ezra came and restored, and now Nehemiah comes and restores Jerusalem twice. So the message in the full narrative must be that God continually restores and rebuilds. The structure of Nehemiah is seen in the series of events that are connected with Nehemiah's return to the city of Jerusalem. Beyond that, the key to the structure is found halfway through chapter 2 and in Nehemiah 7 verse 5. These verses say that God put into Nehemiah's heart to do two things: to rebuild the wall and restore the population in Jerusalem. So thinking about the purpose of this book, why it was written, well, many believe the purpose of Nehemiah is to show that God not only restores, but he repeatedly, constantly and continually restores. Under the leadership of Nehemiah, the remnant accomplished in 52 days what had not been done in 94 years since the first return there under Zerubbabel. There is a sense in which Nehemiah is the book that furnishes the historical background for what is described in Malachi, because Malachi lived and ministered during Nehemiah's time. A comparison of these books side by side reveals that many of the evils and the problems that Nehemiah encountered were the same as those specifically denounced by Malachi. The cold-hearted indifference towards God, described in both books, is seen to remain as a problem in Israel, a problem that would carry on during the period between the Old and the New Testament. So in summarizing this book, Nehemiah wrote to the remnant that rebuilt the wall to record how God uses him and them to rebuild the wall and repopulate Jerusalem, but also to reform the people. Nehemiah restores, leaves, returns and restores again, and restores the people again. So therefore the subject of the book is God's continuing restoration. Zerubbabel came and restored, Ezra came and restored, and now we see Nehemiah comes and restores, twice in fact. The message of Nehemiah must be is that God will continually restore and rebuild his people.